Good afternoon. For me, it is a great pleasure to be here sitting at this panel because my association with Elena goes way back to the early 90s when we both worked on Peru together. And even though I was aware, very much aware of the work that she was doing in Peru, it was gratifying to read the book and see that she was able to translate her professional experience into this very readable book. I must confess I was a bit scared when she invited me to be part of this panel because I only got a hold of a copy of the book yesterday, and I knew the book had 147 pages, so I said, my gosh, this is going to be a marathon. But, especially when the book treats or is centered on sort of dry subjects like property, informality, and institutions. But believe me, I read this book in less than 24 hours, and it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed reading it. It's well put together. It has the characteristics of providing the theoretical underpinning of what she's talking about, as well as linking it with real-life experience. And I think these bits and pieces of anecdotes throughout the book make it a very, very interesting reading. So I'm congratulate you, Elena. This is one more ability that I did not know you had to write a good book.
Stay there, I think.
But I think the book, even though I'm not an expert in institutional economics, I think it makes a very important contribution to the subject because I think it ventures into areas which are relatively new and untested. And from my own perspective as an urban development specialist, I think it complements very well the more traditional approach that we have to slum upgrading in urban areas, where we provide infrastructure, we provide services, but then, the part which is property right that goes along with the lots and the houses that benefit from these investments is always a daunting challenge for anyone who works in slum upgrading projects. So this is indeed a very important contribution. I think it complements well, the work that organizations such as the World Bank and other developmental agencies that finance investments in slum upgrading, these other, I would say the other leg is very much important in addressing the issue of slum upgrading in a more holistic way. I think the book makes a very interesting differentiation between institutions and organizations. And for me, being a layman in institutional economics, it was very important to realize what these differences are. And she explains it in very plain language that makes everybody easy and comfortable with the concepts. And as I was reading the book, it came to me that things that people think for helping the poor, like in a slum upgrading project, I have worked in many different projects in many different countries. Usually, the government authorities who are in charge of doing the slum upgrading projects, they want to impose some sort of restriction on the resale of the property because they say that the beneficiaries might sell their property and move somewhere else. And I say, well, and what's wrong with that? If they cash out, if you created value by adding infrastructure and providing a secure property right to this piece of land or a house, what harm there is in allowing a family to sell this property and move somewhere else? But believe me, in many, many different countries, the idea is that they should put a cap. At least they have to remain for 5 or 6 years there before they can sell the house. I said, well, the only thing you're doing is decreasing the value of that property because it will be transacted in the informal sector. there will be some sort of negotiation that goes under the table between the two parties, the one that sells, the one that buys, and the property, because it cannot be transacted in the real estate market, it becomes unreal, as Elena coins it. And, of course, it has to be sold at a lesser value. So I think in the end, all these good intentions, of putting restrictions here and there, end up really creating institutions that harm the poor rather than benefit the poor. So I think we need to be very, very careful and vigilant when we think about helping the poor in urban areas, in doing Islam upgrading projects, how you approach these things. And some of these approaches, like the one that Elena proposes, is very new to us in the bank. Because again, the traditional approach was to provide infrastructure services and essentially some sort of property security. But I think what she proposes here is something which is groundbreaking. Another, I think, good feature of the book is that it's very pragmatic. She talks in plain language. She provides a sort of a how to do things, and that's very helpful. I think I have two, I wouldn't say questions, but I think there are challenges that remain when one reads the book, because two critical pieces or elements in the argument that she makes are political will to implement these reforms and trust. And I think even though she discusses how you analyze situations and try to spot problems and how to address problems, I think political will always be a major challenge, because you cannot control politicians. Either you have someone who firmly believes that this is the right thing to do and wants to champion those ideas, or it will be a sort of wish-washy sort of situation and outcome. And trust is another thing which I think is extremely important, but difficult to achieve. So I think there are solutions. I think her book points in the right direction, but I think these two elements, which are critical to the success of the approach, remain very much a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much.